The graduation ceremony had just concluded, the young Grant's enhancement lights still pulsing with excitement as they gathered in Am's private study. The room was lined with rare artifacts from countless trading expeditions, holographic star charts, exotic minerals, and preserved cultural items from dozens of species. Most prized among them, a small shelf of Earth items, carefully curated. "Teacher began Telix, her ocular implants gleaming with ambition, "we've come to present our graduation initiative." Settled into his ergonomic hover chair designed specifically for extended trade negotiations. His own cybernetics whirred softly as he studied his former students, now full Grent traders, eager to make their mark on the galactic economy. "I'm listening," he said, gesturing for them to continue. Jorvis, whose computational enhancements were known to be the most advanced in the class, activated a holographic display in the center of the room. It showed a detailed map of former Droo territory, vast swathes of abandoned space, dead worlds, and dormant trade routes. "The Droo expanse," Jorvis said, his voice modulated to convey confidence and clarity. "Trillions in untapped resources, hundreds of habitable worlds, strategic positioning between 3 major galactic arms, and completely avoided by all major trading houses," noted, his tone cautious. "For good reason." "Precisely why it presents such an opportunity," continued Sella, the group's diplomatic specialist. Her vocal enhancements could shift to match the auditory preferences of a dozen different species. "We propose establishing a Grent-led free trade corridor through the heart of former Droo space." Am's enhancement lights flickered, the Grent equivalent of a raised eyebrow. "Bold, very bold, but the political implications alone—" "We've run the simulations," Telix interjected, her excitement evident. "Even with conservative estimates, we project a 3,200% return on investment within a standard decade. The corridor would connect previously isolated markets, cut transit times between the Orion and Perseus arms by 43%, and open access to resources that have remained untouched since the extinction." Leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued despite his reservations. "And what of the ghosts, both literal and economic?" The young Grent exchanged glances. It was Manti, the quietest of the group but known for her historical expertise, who answered. "The memory of the Droo still haunts the galactic consciousness," she acknowledged, her voice solemn, "but it has been 87 standard years since their extinction. Most species have moved beyond fear into curiosity. Our market research indicates that 68% of major trading entities would utilize a secure corridor through the expanse, if it existed." Rose from his chair and moved to gaze out the view beyond. The bustling Grent trading hub pulsed with activity. Ships from 100 worlds loading and unloading cargo, negotiators finalizing deals, value being created and exchanged in an endless dance of commerce. "You know," he said finally, "there's a reason no one has attempted this before. The humans still maintain periodic patrols through that space, and certain factions within the Galactic Council have worked very hard to ensure the Droo remain nothing but a cautionary tale." "With respect, teacher," said Jorvis, "those same factions have significant financial interests in maintaining the current inefficient trade routes. The status quo benefits them at the expense of galactic prosperity." Turned, his expression unreadable. "You were always my most ambitious student, but remember the 6th lesson from our study of the Droo. The consequences of our actions can be far-reaching." He paused. "What exactly are you asking of me?" Telix stepped forward. "Your endorsement, Teacher Your name still carries significant weight with the Grent Trading Council. With your support, we can secure the initial funding and diplomatic clearances." For a long moment, Ame was silent, his enhancement lights cycling through patterns as he processed the proposal. "I will not endorse this," he said finally, and the young Grent's lights dimmed in disappointment. "Not yet. First, you will conduct a preliminary survey expedition, one system only, assess the true conditions, document the resources, evaluate the risks. If, and only if, you return with data supporting your projections, then I will consider lending my name to your initiative." The young Grant's enhancement lights brightened once more. "Which system?" asked Sella eagerly. Returned to the holographic display and zoomed in on a small, unremarkable star near the former border of Droo space. "This one. Minimal strategic importance, but representative of what you'll find throughout the expanse. A good test case." His voice took on the tone he had used in countless negotiations. "Those are my terms. Take them, or seek another sponsor." The young Grent conferred briefly among themselves, their implants communicating privately. "We accept," Clarke said, "and we'll need a ship." Am's facial implants shifted into what humans would recognize as a smile. "Already arranged. The profitable venture is being prepared as we speak. I may be cautious, but I'm not blind to opportunity." As his former students filed out, buzzing with excitement and plans, turned back to the viewport. His expression grew distant, troubled. "Be careful what you unearth," he murmured to the empty room. "Some investments carry costs that no balance sheet can capture." The profitable venture dropped out of FTL at the edge of the target system, its sensors immediately beginning a comprehensive scan. On the bridge, the young Grent traders watched as data streamed across their displays. "Initial readings show no signs of active technology," reported Jorvis, his cybernetic interfaces directly connected to the ship's systems. 3 planets, an asteroid belt, and interesting. The second planet shows terraforming markers. "Droo terraforming?" asked Telex, who had naturally assumed the position of expedition leader. "Consistent with known Droo environmental engineering, yes," Jorvis confirmed. "The atmosphere would have been breathable for them, though slightly toxic to us without filtration." Sella, monitoring communications, frowned. "I'm picking up something unusual. Not a distress signal, but a beacon? Very low power, automated. It's coming from the 3rd planet." "A trap?" Manthe suggested, her historical databases already searching for precedents. "Unlikely after so many decades," said Telex, "but we proceed with caution. Jorvis, set a course for the 3rd planet. Standard approach, full defensive systems online." As the profitable venture moved deeper into the system, the young Grent continued their analysis. The first planet was a barren rock, rich in heavy metals but otherwise unremarkable. The asteroid belt showed evidence of previous mining operations, long abandoned. It was the second planet that first hinted at the system's secrets. From orbit, they could see the remnants of a small Droo colony. Buildings reclaimed by native vegetation, landing pads cracked and overgrown, but the unmistakable geometric precision of the Droo's architectural style still visible. "Download those patterns," instructed Telex. "Architectural firms across the galaxy would pay well for unique historical designs." "Already cataloging," Manthe confirmed, her enhancements capturing every detail. "And I'm detecting something else. The terraforming wasn't just to make the planet habitable. They were conducting agricultural experiments. These plant formations aren't random." "Export potential?" asked Sella, always thinking of markets. "Unknown without samples," Manthe replied, "but noted for the survey." The ship continued to the 3rd planet. Smaller, rocky, with a thin atmosphere. As they approached, the beacon signal grew stronger. "I've decrypted it," Sella announced suddenly. It's a Droo archive marker, similar to our own knowledge repositories." The bridge fell silent. A Droo archive would be invaluable. Technology, cultural artifacts, historical records. The academic and museum markets alone would generate incalculable profits. "Prepare a survey team," Telex ordered. "Environmental suits, full-spectrum scanners, and defensive measures. We don't know what automated systems might still be active." Hours later, the team stood in a vast underground chamber, their suit lights illuminating what appeared to be a data storage facility. Rows of crystalline memory matrices lined the walls, their alien architecture both beautiful and forbidding. "Can we access it?" Telex asked, her voice hushed despite the privacy of their comms. Jorvis approached one of the control interfaces. Their technology was advanced but not incomprehensible. With our translation algorithms, he began interfacing his cybernetics with the alien system. "Be careful," warned Manti. "Remember the history lessons. The Droo were known for booby traps and dead man switches." "Accounting for that," Jorvis assured her, his enhancement lights flickering rapidly as he processed the alien code structures. "I'm creating a read-only connection. We observe, but don't alter." Gradually, the facility came to life around them. Lights activated, holographic interfaces shimmered into existence, and a low hum permeated the chamber. "I'm in," Jorvis announced. "The system is organizing the data for us. It recognizes our query patterns, if not our specific species." "What have we found?" Telex asked, moving closer. "Everything," Jorvis breathed, his enhancement lights pulsing with excitement. "Cultural records, technological schematics, astronomical surveys, biological research. This wasn't just an archive, it was a complete backup of Droo civilization." Sela joined them at the interface. "The profit potential is staggering. We could parcel this out over decades. Universities, museums, tech firms, cultural preservationists." "Hold," Manti said sharply, her historical algorithms flagging something. "Jorvis, go back to that last data set, the one labeled with the Droo symbol for continuity." Jorvis navigated back to the indicated section. As the data resolved into readable form, the young Grent fell silent once more, this time in shock. That's not possible," Sela whispered. The records were clear. A small population of Droo, fewer than 10,000, had escaped the human extermination campaign. They had fled to a remote system beyond the galaxy's edge, establishing a hidden colony with technology designed to mask their presence from detection. "They survived," Telex said, her voice a mixture of awe and concern. "The Droo aren't extinct." "This changes everything," Mantley said quietly. "If the humans learned of this, they'd finish what they started," Sela concluded grimly, "and the war would begin anew." Jorvis stepped back from the interface. The galactic economy couldn't survive another Droo-human conflict. Markets would collapse overnight. The four young Grents stood in silence, the weight of their discovery bearing down on them. Finally, Telex spoke. "We came seeking profit," she said slowly. "Instead, we've found something far more volatile, knowledge that could destabilize the entire galaxy." "What do we do?" asked Sela. "Report this to the Galactic Council? To Telex's enhancement lights cycled through decision-making patterns. "For now, we say nothing about the survivors. We take the rest, the resources, the technology, the cultural artifacts. Those align with our original proposal. But the existence of living Droo, that must remain our secret, at least until we determine the wisest course of action." "Suppressing information goes against everything we were taught," Manthi objected. "So does triggering a war that would destroy trillions in market value," Jorvis countered. "Think of the sixth lesson. The consequences of our actions can be far-reaching." Telex nodded. "We need time to consider the implications. For now, we complete our survey as planned. We document the resources, the technology, everything that would make the trade corridor viable. But we partition this data," she gestured to the survival records, "until we can consult with privately." One by one, the others agreed. Their enhancement lights synchronized in the Grent gesture of consensus. "For the good of galactic trade," they recited in unison, the ancient Grent motto that had guided their people for millennia. As they prepared to return to their ship, Manthi lingered, her historical databases still processing the implications. "We came looking for opportunity," she murmured. "We may have found our judgment day instead." Am's private study was sealed, all recording devices deactivated, all communication systems offline. His former students stood before him, their enhancement lights muted with tension as he absorbed the full implications of their discovery. "Living Droo," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "After all this time, a small population," Telex clarified, "hidden beyond the galaxy's edge. The coordinates are encrypted in the archive, but we didn't access them. We thought it safer that way." Am rose and paced the room, his cybernetic legs moving silently across the polished floor. "You were right to bring this to me privately. The implications are staggering." "The question is what to do now," said Sella. "Our original proposal for the trade corridor is sound. The resources alone would revolutionize multiple market sectors. But the archive complicates matters," Manti added. "Even without the survival data, the cultural and technological information it contains would be politically explosive." Stopped his pacing and turned to face them. "Tell me, what does your Grent training suggest you should do?" The four exchanged glances. It was Jorvis who spoke first. "Maximum profit would come from selective disclosure," he analyzed. "We reveal the resources, some of the technology, perhaps curated cultural artifacts. Enough to justify the trade corridor, but nothing that would inflame human sentiment or trigger political instability." "And the survivors?" Pressed. "Remain unknown," Sella said firmly. "The risk assessment is clear. If humans learned of living Droo, they would likely pursue extinction to completion. The resulting conflict would devastate galactic markets for generations." Enhancement lights cycled through contemplative patterns. "So you propose to withhold critical information for profit. How does this align with the lessons of ethical trading?" Telex stepped forward. "With respect, teacher, we see it differently. We're not withholding information just for profit. We're preventing a catastrophic war. Yes, we stand to gain financially, but so would countless others across the galaxy. The trade corridor would benefit millions of worlds." "And what of the Droo themselves?" Asked quietly. "Do they not deserve a voice in this decision?" This question silenced the young traders. Finally, Manti spoke. "Historical precedent suggests contact would be dangerous for them and for us. The humans monitor all long-range communications to the galactic rim. Any attempt to reach the Droo survivors would risk exposing them." Nodded slowly. "A logical analysis. Now let me pose another question. What if someone else discovers what you have found? What if the humans eventually detect the Droo colony on their own? By then perhaps tensions will have eased," suggested Sella, though her tone lacked conviction. "Cultural exchange through our trade corridor could gradually rehabilitate the Droo's historical image, make them seem less monstrous." "A thin hope," observed, "and one that places the entire Grent trading position at risk. If it were discovered that we knew and concealed this information, our reputation for honest dealing would be destroyed. No species would trust us again." The four young Grent fell silent, their enhancement lights dimming as they processed this uncomfortable truth. "Yet the alternative seems equally unacceptable," Telex said finally. "Do we simply report the existence of Droo survivors and watch as humans launch another extinction campaign? Do we trigger the very war we hope to prevent?" Returned to his chair, his enhancement lights now pulsing in the pattern that his students recognized from their most challenging ethical lessons. "You face what humans call a moral dilemma," he said. "A situation where all available options seem to violate some ethical principle. In such cases, we must seek not the perfect solution, but the one that best balances competing values." He activated his own holographic display, bringing up the map of the former Droo territories. "Your trade corridor has merit," he acknowledged. "The economic benefits would be substantial. But it cannot be built on a foundation of such dangerous secrets." "What do you suggest, teacher?" asked Telex. Enhancement lights settled into a resolved pattern. "A third path. We will proceed with the Trade Corridor Initiative, focusing initially on resource development and safe archaeological recovery. Meanwhile, I will activate my oldest and most trusted network, traders who operated during the war, who maintained connections with both humans and Droo." "To what end?" Jorvis asked. "To lay groundwork," explained, "not for immediate disclosure, but for eventual reconciliation. We will work through intermediaries, through cultural exchanges, through careful narrative management. We will aim to gradually shift perceptions of the Droo from monsters to a complex civilization that made tragic mistakes." "That could take decades," Sala observed. "Good trading requires patience," reminded her. "And in the meantime, your trade corridor will flourish, building economic interdependencies that would make renewed conflict too costly for all parties. "And the survivors?" Manthe asked. "Do we contact them?" "Not yet," decided. "Their existence remains our most closely guarded secret, but we will prepare for the day when contact becomes possible, when the galaxy is ready for their return." Telex considered this plan, her analytical enhancements evaluating its probability of success. "It's risky. Many variables, many potential points of failure. All worthwhile ventures involve risk," reminded her. "But consider the potential returns, not just profit, but the preservation of a species, the prevention of war, the establishment of new markets and cultural exchanges. Is that not worth the effort?" The young Grent conferred briefly among themselves, their implants communicating privately, as they had done when first presenting their proposal. Finally, they turned back to their teacher. "We are in agreement," Telex announced. "We will proceed with your approach. The trade corridor will be our public focus, while we quietly work toward a future where the truth can be safely revealed." Am's facial implants shifted into his characteristic smile. "Then let us begin the real work. You came to me seeking endorsement for a trade initiative. Instead, you have embarked on something far more significant, a multi-generational project to reshape galactic history." As his former students left to begin preparation of their formal proposal to the Grent Trading Council, Am turned once more to the viewport. Beyond, the endless dance of commerce continued, ships coming and going, value being created and exchanged. "For the good of galactic trade," he murmured, "and for something more." The Great Hall of Trade hummed with activity as Grent from across the galaxy gathered for the formal presentation. The Trading Council members sat elevated on their traditional hovering platforms, their ancient cybernetic enhancements gleaming with the patina of centuries. In the center of the hall stood Telex, Jorvis, Sella, and Manthe, their own enhancements polished to perfection for this crucial moment. Behind them, Am watched proudly from the mentor's position. "Esteemed members of the Trading Council," Telex began, her voice modulated to carry perfectly throughout the vast chamber. "We present for your consideration the Grent Initiative for the Revitalization of the Eastern Expanse." The formal name had been carefully chosen, no mention of the Droo, no hint of the true scope of their ambitions. A holographic display activated, showing the proposed trade corridor in glowing blue against the darkness of the former Droo territories. "Our preliminary survey has confirmed what our projections suggested," Telex continued. "The Eastern Expanse contains vast resources lying fallow, minerals, habitable worlds, stellar phenomena of scientific interest, and archaeological sites of historical significance." Jorvis stepped forward. "The initial phase would establish 3 trading hubs at strategic points along the corridor." The hologram zoomed in to show the proposed locations. "Each positioned to maximize logistical efficiency while minimizing security concerns." "Security concerns?" inquired one of the council members, her enhancement lights pulsing with skepticism. "You mean the humans?" "We have taken human sensitivities into account," Sella assured her, stepping forward. "Our diplomatic assessment indicates that a purely commercial initiative focused on resource development rather than territorial claims would not trigger human opposition. Indeed, our projections suggest they would become major users of the corridor within 5 standard years." Another council member leaned forward. "And what of the historical contamination? The Droo were not merely defeated, they were erased. Their worlds were sterilized. Is it safe to operate in such environments?" This was where Manthe's expertise came into play. "Our survey confirmed that radiation levels have declined to acceptable parameters in 87% of the expanse. The remaining areas would be clearly marked and avoided. As for biological agents, the human cleansing was thorough. We detected no trace of Droo biological material in any of our sampling sites." This last statement was technically true. They had found no biological material in their sampling sites. The archive had been carefully excluded from those official records. Questions continued for hours as the council probed every aspect of the proposal: financial projections, security arrangements, diplomatic implications, technological requirements. The young Grent had prepared thoroughly for each topic. Finally, the council's eldest, a Grent so ancient that most of her original body had been replaced with cybernetics, raised her hand for silence. "Ambitious," she declared, her voice carrying the metallic timbre of age. "Perhaps too ambitious. The profit potential is clear, but so are the risks." Her ancient eyes turned to "You have sponsored these young traders, You who witnessed the fall of the Droo Empire firsthand. Do you truly believe this initiative is sound?" Stepped forward to stand beside his former students. "Honored eldest, esteemed counsel, I have reviewed every aspect of this proposal. I have verified their survey data personally, and yes, I endorse it without reservation." A murmur ran through the assembled Grent. "The past cannot be changed," continued, "but the future remains open to profitable investment. The Eastern Expanse has remained untouched for too long, a vast market opportunity left unrealized due to fear and painful memories. It is time for the Grent to demonstrate once again why we are the galaxy's preeminent traders, because we see opportunity where others see only risk." The eldest's enhancement lights cycled through deliberative patterns for what seemed an eternity. Finally, she spoke. "The initiative is approved for Phase 1 implementation. Funding will be allocated according to the standard venture formula. Progress reports will be required quarterly." Her ancient eyes narrowed. "Do not disappoint the council." As the assembly dispersed, Telex and her companions could barely contain their excitement, their enhancement lights pulsing rapidly despite their attempts at professional restraint. "Phase 1 approval," Jorvis whispered. "Everything we hoped for." "It's just the beginning," Telex reminded him. "The real work starts now." Guided them toward a private chamber where they could speak freely. Once sealed inside, their composure broke, and the young Grent allowed their enhancement lights to flash in celebration. "Well done," commended them. "A flawless presentation." "We've spent months preparing," Sella admitted. "Every possible question, every objection, we've rehearsed it all." "And now we have one standard year to establish the first trading hub," Manthe noted. "It will be a Herculean effort, made more complex by our secondary objective," Telex added, her voice lowering despite the room's privacy shields. Nodded gravely. "Indeed. Even as you build the visible infrastructure of the trade corridor, we must begin the invisible work of preparing for eventual disclosure." "Have you made progress with your network?" Jorvis asked. "Some," acknowledged. "I've re-established contact with several key figures from the war era, traders who maintain connections with both humans and Droo, diplomats who attempted to broker peace before the final extermination began. Many are retired now, but their influence remains." "And their reaction to our discovery?" Telex inquired. Enhancement lights pulsed with caution. "Mixed. Some see the potential for healing an ancient wound. Others fear reopening it would only lead to more bloodshed. All agree that immediate disclosure would be catastrophic." "So we proceed as planned," Sella concluded. "The trade corridor moves forward openly while the reconciliation project develops in the shadows." "And what of the archive?" Manthe asked. "The knowledge it contains could revolutionize dozens of technical fields, to say nothing of its cultural and historical value." "We will begin controlled extraction," decided. "Technical knowledge that can be plausibly attributed to archaeological recovery. Cultural artifacts that pose no political risk. Each release, carefully timed and contextually framed to gradually reshape the narrative around Droo's civilization." Telex enhancement light cycled through analytical patterns. "A multi-generational project indeed. We may not live to see its completion." "The longest journeys begin with a single trading contract," reminded her, quoting an ancient Grent proverb. "For now, focus on making Phase 1 a success. Establish that first hub. Begin resource extraction, prove the economic viability of the corridor, build a foundation strong enough to support the weight of the truth when the time comes to reveal it." The young Grent synchronized their enhancement lights in affirmation. "For the good of galactic trade," they recited together, "and for something more." As they departed to begin implementation, remained behind, his ancient eyes turned inward to memories of a war that had changed the course of galactic history. "May your trading be more successful than my warnings were," he murmured to the ghosts of the past. "For all our sakes." One standard year later, the first hub of the trade corridor gleamed against the darkness of space, a marvel of Grent engineering and commercial optimism. Shaped like a vast metal flower, its central core housed administrative functions while its petals served as docking bays, warehouses, and trading floors. Already, ships from 24 species arrived daily, bringing goods and departing with the first harvests from the expanse's abundant resources. In her office atop the central spire, Telex reviewed the quarterly projections with satisfaction. Her enhancement lights pulsed with the calm rhythm of profitable returns. "We're exceeding Phase 1 targets by 22%, she noted as Jorvis entered the room. "The council will be pleased." "They should be," Jorvis agreed, his own enhancements interfacing with the station's systems to update his data. "Resource extraction is proceeding efficiently, and we've already had inquiries about Phase 2 expansion from 17 major trading houses." Telex's satisfaction dimmed slightly. "And our other project?" Jorvis activated the room's privacy shields before responding. "Moving more slowly, but reports progress. His network has begun introducing carefully curated Droo cultural artifacts into academic circles. The narrative emphasis is on their artistic achievements and philosophical complexity rather than their military aggression." "Human response?" "Cautiously curious," Jorvis reported. "No signs of renewed hostility yet, but it's early days." Telex nodded, turning to gaze out at the docking bays where ships of all designs were busy loading and unloading cargo. "Where are Sella and Manthe? I expected them back from the survey expedition yesterday." Jorvis began, but was interrupted by his communication implant. "Speaking of which, they've just docked, and they're requesting an immediate secure meeting." Telex's enhancement lights flickered with concern. "Here, as soon as they've cleared quarantine." 30 minutes later, Sella and Manthe entered Telex's office, their enhancement lights pulsing with an urgency that immediately set Telex on alert. "Secure the room," Sella ordered without preamble. "Maximum privacy protocols." As Jorvis complied, Manthe removed a data crystal from her personal storage compartment. "We found something that wasn't in the archive, something that changes everything." Telex's enhancement lights cycled through caution patterns. "Explain." "We were surveying Sector 7 Gamma, cataloging mineral deposits," Sella began. "Standard procedure, but we detected an energy signature beneath the surface of the fourth planet. Faint, but definitely artificial." "Droo technology?" asked Jorvis. "That's what we assumed," Manthe continued. "We expected another archive, perhaps. What we found was something else entirely." She inserted the crystal into Telex's system. A holographic image appeared. A vast underground facility, clearly of Droo design, but unlike anything they had seen before. "This facility wasn't built to preserve information," Sella explained, her voice hushed despite the privacy shields. "It was designed to preserve Droo." "A survival bunker?" Telex asked, her enhancement lights pulsing rapidly. "More than that," Manthe said. "It's a Genesis vault, containing genetic samples from thousands of Droo individuals, embryonic storage units, automated incubation systems, everything needed to rebuild a population from scratch." The office fell silent as the implications sank in. "Is it active?" Jorvis finally asked. "Dormant," Sella replied, "but intact. The systems are in stasis, waiting for activation codes that never came. The Droo who fled beyond the galaxy's edge weren't the only survival contingency. This was their backup plan, a way to ensure their species could be reborn, even if all other populations were destroyed." Telex's enhancement light cycled through decision-making patterns. "Does anyone else know about this?" "No one," Manthe assured her. "We maintained communication silence during the entire investigation. All data is on this crystal only, nothing in the main systems." "Good," Telex said. "This must remain absolutely confidential. Not even can know yet." This declaration surprised the others, their enhancement lights flickering in astonishment. "Not tell Jarvis questioned. "He's been our guide through all of this. Why withhold this discovery?" Telex rose and paced the office, her cybernetic movements betraying her agitation despite her controlled voice. "Because this is no longer just about disclosure or reconciliation," she explained. "This is about resurrection. The power to bring back an extinct species. A species that humans deliberately wiped out. The political implications are orders of magnitude more volatile than simply revealing that some Droo survived." "She's right," Seller realized. "This isn't just about the past anymore. It's about the future, about who has the right to decide whether the Droo can reclaim their place in the galaxy." Mansi's historical databases were already processing precedents. "There is no historical parallel for this situation. No ethical framework specifically designed for the resurrection of an intentionally exterminated intelligent species, which means we need to create one," Telex decided. "Before we involve or anyone else, we need to develop a comprehensive analysis of all implications, ethical, political, economic, and practical." "And if our analysis suggests resurrection is too dangerous?" Jarvis asked quietly. The question hung in the air, weighty with moral gravity. "Then we face another dilemma," Telex acknowledged. "Whether we have the right to prevent it, whether non-interference is itself a moral choice with consequences we must bear." Chella's diplomatic enhancements were calculating political scenarios. The humans would see resurrection as a direct challenge to their previous decision, a nullification of their victory. Many would demand immediate military action, while others might see it as an opportunity for atonement, Manthi countered. "Human ethical thinking has evolved over the generations. Some might welcome the chance to rectify what many now view as a historical atrocity." "Speculation," Jarvis noted. "We need data. We need to understand human thinking on this specific issue before we can proceed." Telex's enhancement lights settled into a resolved pattern. "Agreed. Here's what we do. First, we secure this facility. Sella, arrange for a research outpost to be established on that planet, ostensibly for mineral extraction. Staff it with our most trusted associates. Second, we begin targeted information gathering. Manthi, leverage your historical databases and academic connections. Create a theoretical paper on the ethics of xenospecies resurrection. Nothing specifically about the Droo, but exploring the concept generally. Let's see how academics respond. Third, Jarvis, develop security protocols for the Genesis Vault that exceed anything we've implemented before. If this information leaks prematurely, the consequences could be catastrophic." "And you?" Sella asked. "I will focus on the trade corridor's expansion," Telex replied. "Phase 2 needs to proceed flawlessly. We need to build economic interdependency so robust that conflict becomes unthinkable no matter what is eventually revealed." The four synchronized their enhancement lights in agreement. "One more thing," Telex added. "We will tell but not yet. Let's gather preliminary data first, develop initial ethical frameworks, then we'll bring him in. His experience will be invaluable, but I want us to approach him with more than just a problem. I want us to present possible solutions as well." "How long?" Manthi asked. "One standard quarter," Telex decided. "Then we reassess based on what we've learned." As her colleagues left to begin their assigned tasks, Telex turned back to the holographic image of the Genesis Vault. Its alien architecture, both beautiful and ominous, seemed to pulse with potential and danger in equal measure. "What would you do?" she whispered to the empty room. "If you could begin again, would you choose a different path?" The Droo facility offered no answer, only the silent promise of decisions yet to be made. The standard quarter passed more quickly than any of them had anticipated. The trade corridor's Phase 2 expansion proceeded ahead of schedule, with 3 additional hubs under construction and resource extraction exceeding projections by a substantial margin. The Grent Trading Council had elevated the initiative to priority status, allocating additional resources and diplomatic support. On the surface, everything was proceeding perfectly. Beneath that surface, complexities multiplied. Telex sat at the head of the conference table in her private strategy room, reviewing the reports her colleagues had compiled. Jorvis had secured the Genesis vault with layers of protection so sophisticated that not even the station's security systems knew of its existence. Sela had established the research outpost, staffed with specialists who believed they were analyzing unique mineral formations. And Manthi, "Your academic paper caused quite a stir," Telex noted, reviewing the data. 17 formal responses already, and discussion threads across multiple species scholarly networks. Manth's enhancement lights pulsed with scholarly pride. "The response has been illuminating. I kept the scenario theoretical, a hypothetical extinct species with no reference to the Droo, but the ethical frameworks that emerged were remarkably consistent across species boundaries." "Summarize?" Jorvis requested. "3 primary ethical positions have emerged," Manthi explained, her academic enhancements organizing the information. "The preservationist view holds that extinct species have an inherent right to existence if restoration is possible. The consequentialist view focuses on the potential benefits or harms of resurrection. And the sovereigntist view contends that the decision belongs to whoever caused the extinction in the first place." "Let me guess which view the human scholars favored," Sela said dryly. "Actually, human responses were split," Manthi countered. "Some advocated strongly for preservationist ethics, arguing that the ability to restore implies a moral obligation to do so. Others did indeed favor sovereigntist approaches, but often with nuanced caveats about historical context and evolving ethical standards." Telex leaned forward. "And what of the practical considerations? Beyond the ethics, what do your projections show about how various species would react to a Droo resurrection?" Manthi's enhancement lights cycled through analytical patterns. "Mixed, as one would expect. Younger species with no direct memory of the Droo-human war trend toward curiosity and cautious optimism. Longer-lived species who experience the conflict firsthand remain deeply wary, and human," she paused, her historical databases complying the most current assessment. "Human reaction would be the most unpredictable," she finally continued. "Their species has undergone significant cultural evolution since the war. Many now view the complete extinction of the Droo as a historical atrocity, a stain on their collective conscience. Others maintain that it was a necessary action against an implacable foe." "Political factions," Jorvis inquired, "would split along predictable lines," Sela interjected, her diplomatic enhancements synthesizing the data. "Human expansionists would likely view Droo resurrection as a threat to be eliminated. Traditionalists would see it as an affront to their ancestors' decision. Progressives might welcome it as a chance for historical reconciliation. Religious groups would be divided based on their theological frameworks regarding responsibility for past action." "In other words," Telex summarized, "disclosure would create a political firestorm with no predictable outcome." "Correct," Sela confirmed. "Though I should note that our trade corridor has already begun reshaping the political landscape. The economic benefits are being felt across human space, creating vested interests in stability. Any faction advocating for military action would face significant opposition from commercial entities now profiting from the initiative." Telex nodded, her enhancement lights pulsing with calculation. "That was always part of our strategy. Economic interdependence as a buffer against conflict." She paused. "Jorvis, your security assessment." Jorvis's cybernetic interfaces displayed a complex risk matrix. "The Genesis vault is secure for now, but long-term isolation is problematic. The facility requires periodic maintenance that will become increasingly difficult to disguise as standard mining operations. Additionally, there's the fundamental question: if resurrection were to proceed, how could it be kept secret? A new population of Droo would eventually need to integrate into galactic society." "Which brings us to the foundational question," Telex said, her voice growing serious. "Should resurrection proceed at all? Do we have the right to make that decision?" The room fell silent, each Grent processing the moral weight of the situation. "From a purely commercial perspective," Jorvis began cautiously, Resurrection would eventually create new markets, new trading partners. The Droo were innovative technologists before their militarism consumed them. But the risk of renewed conflict is substantial, Sela countered. War is always bad for business in the long run, no matter how profitable weapons manufacturing might be in the short term. There's also the question of the Droo themselves, Manthe added. Would a resurrected population, raised without the context of their original civilization, truly be Droo in any meaningful sense? Would they inherit the martial culture that led to their downfall, or would they develop along different lines? Talix absorbed these perspectives, her enhancement lights cycling through decision-making patterns. We must tell she concluded. This decision is too consequential for us alone. We need his historical perspective, his first-hand experience with both Droo and humans during the war. The others synchronized their enhancement lights in agreement. One more consideration, Jorvis added. The existing Droo survivors beyond the galaxy's edge. How do they factor into this equation? Do they have primary claim to the genetic repository? Should they be consulted before any decision is made? A valid point, Talix acknowledged. But contact remains problematic. Any transmission to their location risks exposure to human monitoring systems. She paused. Unless... The others recognized the pattern of her enhancement lights, the rapid cycling that indicated a new trading strategy forming. The trade corridor's Phase 3 would logically extend toward the galactic rim, she said slowly. If we positioned a hub at the furthest possible point, we could potentially establish a secure communication relay disguised as standard commercial traffic. Ambitious, Sela noted. The Council might question the economic viability of such a remote location. Then we'll need to make the economic case compelling, Talix replied. Resource surveys, projected trade volumes, strategic positioning for future expansion beyond the rim. We're good traders, we'll find the profit angle. The four synchronized their enhancement lights once more, this time in the pattern that signified a trading strategy accepted. We'll meet with tomorrow, Talix decided. For now, continue your assigned tasks. Manthe, prepare a comprehensive briefing on your ethical research. Sela, develop diplomatic scenarios for various disclosure outcomes. Jorvis, assess the technical requirements for resurrection if that path were chosen. I'll prepare the economic case for Phase 3 expansion. As they rose to leave, Talix activated the holographic image of the Genesis Vault once more. We came seeking profit, she reminded them, echoing their words from that first discovery. We found responsibility instead. Private quarters aboard the main hub were sparse by Grent standards. A trader who had seen multiple fortunes rise and fall knew the impermanence of material possessions. Still, a few treasures from his long career were displayed with care. A ceremonial knife from the first human diplomatic mission he had accompanied, a crystalline data storage device containing his complete trading history, and a small, seemingly unremarkable stone from Earth itself. When the four young Grent arrived, his enhancement lights pulsed with genuine pleasure. My most successful students, he greeted them. The initiative exceeds all projections. The Council speaks of you with respect usually reserved for traders 3 times your age. Thank you, teacher, Talix replied, her own enhancement lights dimming to indicate the serious nature of their visit. But we're here on a matter more complex than quarterly reports. Ancient eyes studied each of them in turn. You've discovered something else, he stated rather than asked. Something you've kept even from me. Yes, Talix confirmed. Security protocols are in place. We can speak freely here. For the next hour, they presented their discovery in meticulous detail. The Genesis Vault, its capabilities, their research into ethical frameworks, the political implications, and their tentative plans for Phase 3 expansion to establish contact with the surviving Droo colony. Listened without interruption, his enhancement lights cycling through patterns of surprise, calculation, and deep contemplation. When they finished, he rose and moved to the viewport, gazing out at the bustling activity of the trading hub. Ships coming and going, resources being exchanged, value being created. In all my centuries of trading, he said finally, I have never encountered a commodity as valuable or as dangerous as the choice you now face. What would you advise, teacher? Manthe asked. Turned back to them, his ancient eyes seeming to look beyond the present moment into multiple possible futures. First, understand this. There is no risk-free option. All paths forward carry profound consequences. His enhancement lights settled into the teaching pattern they remembered from their academy days. The preservationist ethics have merit. Extinction is indeed a tragedy, especially when it need not be permanent. The consequentialist view is pragmatic. Outcomes matter in ways intentions cannot predict. And the sovereigntist position has its own logic. Those who acted bear responsibility for those actions. But which framework should guide our decision? Jorvis pressed. None of them alone, Aum replied, and all of them together. True wisdom comes not from adhering to a single ethical system, but from understanding the insights and blindnesses of each. He moved to his small collection of treasures and lifted the unremarkable earthstone. This was given to me by a human diplomat during the final days of the war, he said, a token of appreciation for my attempts to broker peace negotiations. She told me it came from a place called Hiroshima, a city destroyed in an earlier human conflict, then rebuilt as a monument to peace. She said it reminded her that even the darkest moments can eventually lead to reconciliation. He placed the stone carefully back in its display. The humans are capable of remarkable moral growth, he continued. Their history is filled with atrocities followed by atonement, destruction followed by creation. They learn, albeit slowly and often at terrible cost. You believe they could accept a Droo resurrection? Sela asked, clearly skeptical. Some would, acknowledged. Others would not. The question is whether enough would choose reconciliation over renewed conflict. And that question cannot be answered with certainty until the moment of decision arrives. Then what do we do? Telix asked, frustration edging her voice. Wait for perfect certainty that will never come? Aum's enhancement lights pulsed with approval at her impatience. No, perfect certainty is never available in either trading or ethics. Instead, you create conditions that maximize the probability of your preferred outcome. He activated his own holographic display, merging their data into a multi-dimensional projection. Your Phase 3 expansion is wise, he said, studying the projection. Establishing communication with the surviving Droo colony is essential. They must have a voice in this decision. It is their genetic heritage, their existence at stake. The young Grent exchanged glances, their enhancement lights pulsing with relief that their teacher approved this part of their strategy. But contact is only the beginning, continued. If, and I stress if, resurrection is to proceed, it must be part of a comprehensive reconciliation process. Not a unilateral action, not a fait accompli presented to the galaxy, but a carefully orchestrated diplomatic initiative involving multiple species as guarantors and witnesses. The humans would never agree to resurrection negotiations, Sela objected. Not if framed as resurrection, no, agreed. But if approached as historical reconciliation, as an opportunity to address a painful chapter in galactic history, some would engage, particularly if economic incentives aligned with moral considerations. The trade corridor, Jorvis realized. It's already creating those incentives. Precisely, confirmed. Your initiative is laying groundwork beyond its stated purpose. Every new trading relationship, every interdependency, every mutual profit, all serve to create a web of connections that make conflict increasingly costly for all parties. Telex's enhancement lights cycled through analysis patterns. How long? How long until conditions might support disclosure? Decades, most likely, answered without hesitation. This is indeed a multi-generational project. The groundwork must be thorough, the timing exquisite. One misstep could trigger the very conflict we seek to prevent. And in the meantime, Manthe asked, the Genesis Vault remains dormant? The Droo beyond the rim continue in isolation, unaware of this discovery? For now, confirmed. Until communication is established, until diplomatic conditions improve, until the narrative around Droo history has been sufficiently recontextualized through your cultural artifact program? He looked at each of his former students in turn. You came to me seeking endorsement for a trade initiative. You returned with a moral quandary of galaxy-shaking proportions. In both cases, I have faith in your ability to navigate complex scenarios. You are Grent traders in the finest tradition, seeing opportunity where others see only risk, creating value where others see only cost. The four synchronized their enhancement lights in gratitude for his confidence. We'll proceed with Phase 3, Talix decided. Establish the communication relay, make contact with the surviving colony. Only then, with their input, will we make any decision regarding the Genesis Vault. A wise approach, approved, and I will accelerate my own network's efforts to reshape the narrative around Droo history. The more context we can provide, the more nuanced the galactic understanding becomes, the better our chances of eventual reconciliation. As the meeting concluded, Amma offered one final thought. Remember the fifth lesson from our study of the Droo: adaptability is key. No plan survives first contact with reality unchanged. Be prepared to adjust, to redirect, to find new paths forward as circumstances evolve. The young Grent filed out, their enhancement lights pulsing with renewed purpose and determination. Only Talix remained behind, sensing that her teacher had more to say in private. When the others had gone, turned to her. There's something else, something you haven't shared with your colleagues. Talix's enhancement lights flickered with surprise. How did you know? I taught you everything about trading, but not everything about reading enhancement patterns, replied. Yours have been cycling through conflict sequences whenever the Genesis Vault is mentioned. There's another factor you're considering. Talix hesitated, then activated her personal data crystal. A new hologram appeared, detailed scans of the Vault's interior systems. The facility isn't just dormant, she said quietly. It's programmed to activate automatically if it detects certain conditions. One of those conditions appears to be sustained presence of Grent cybernetic signatures. Am's ancient eyes widened. The Droo knew about us, about our potential role? It seems so, Talix confirmed. The system is already awakening, teacher. Slowly, subtly, but undeniably. The maintenance routines have begun. Within 5 standard years, it will reach the point of requiring active intervention, either to continue toward resurrection or to permanently deactivate. Absorbed this information, his enhancement lights cycling through rapid calculation patterns. 5 years, he mused. Not decades after all. The timeline has compressed significantly. What do we do? Talix asked, for once sounding like the student she had once been rather than the accomplished trader she had become. Am's enhancement lights settled into a resolved pattern. We adapt. We accelerate our plans. Phase 3 begins immediately. Contact with the surviving colony becomes our highest priority, and we prepare contingencies for multiple outcomes, including the possibility that we might need to act before ideal conditions are established. The risk, Talix began, is substantial, acknowledged. But risk and opportunity are two faces of the same economic reality. Sometimes the boldest trade is the most profitable. Talix synchronized her enhancement lights with his, accepting his guidance. For the good of galactic trade, she recited, and for something more. Indeed, agreed, his ancient eyes turning once more to the small stone from Earth. For something much more. The Phase 3 hub took shape at the very edge of charted space, its construction accelerated by resources diverted from a dozen other Grent projects. The Trading Council had questioned the economic rationale briefly, but Talix's presentation of projected trade routes beyond the galactic rim had been masterfully convincing. The numbers, carefully crafted by Jorvis to appear conservative while actually being quite optimistic, had silenced all opposition. Now, 3 standard years later, the hub stood complete, a marvel of engineering positioned closer to the intergalactic void than any permanent installation in known history. Its official purpose was to serve as a gateway for future exploration and resource development. Its actual purpose was known only to 5 Grent in the entire galaxy. In the communication center, buried deep within the hub's core and shielded by layers of security that officially didn't exist, Talix reviewed the final preparations with her colleagues. "Transmission array is aligned," Jorvis reported, his cybernetic interfaces monitoring the sophisticated equipment. "Encrypted using the protocols found in the archive. If the survivors maintain their communication systems, they should be able to receive and decrypt." "Message composition?" Talix inquired, turning to Manthe. "Completed and verified," Manthe confirmed. "Historical authentication markers embedded throughout. Brief summary of galactic development since their departure. Explanation of our discovery of the Genesis Vault. Request for contact and guidance." "And diplomatic considerations?" Talix asked Sela. "We've emphasized our role as neutral intermediaries," Sela explained. "Made clear that we're not allied with humans but maintain trading relationships with them. Stressed that no action regarding the vault will be taken without their input, and included OM's personal authentication code from the war era. They should recognize it if they maintain historical records." Talix nodded, her enhancement lights cycling through final decision patterns. "Time estimate for response?" "If they're monitoring for transmissions, days or weeks," Jorvis calculated. "If not, possibly months. The signal will repeat at intervals, growing stronger each time." "Very well, proceed with transmission." Jorvis activated the array. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a subtle vibration passed through the hub as enormous energies were channeled and focused into a tight beam aimed at coordinates extracted from the Droo archive. "Transmission complete," Jorvis announced. "Now we wait." The waiting proved shorter than any of them had anticipated. Just 17 standard days later, as Talix was reviewing resource allocation for the trade corridor's ongoing operations, Jorvis burst into her office, his enhancement lights pulsing with excitement. "We've received a response," he announced without preamble, "encrypted using our own protocols. They're still out there, Talix, and they've been watching." The message was brief but unambiguous. Coordinates for a rendezvous point in neutral space, a time frame, and a request that himself be present. The signature code matched those in the archive, confirming its authenticity. "They know Manthe noted with surprise. "Personally, it seems he never mentioned direct contact with Droo leadership," Sela observed, though he always said his network included those who had maintained connections with both sides. "Perhaps he had his own secrets," Talix suggested. "We'll find out soon enough. The rendezvous is scheduled for next month, just enough time to make arrangements without arousing suspicion." Preparations moved forward with characteristic Grent efficiency. A small, fast ship was requisitioned for specialized trade negotiations. Crew selections were made with utmost care. The official destination was logged as a potential new trading partner in an unremarkable system. Technically true, if deliberately misleading. When the day of departure arrived, joined the 4 young Grent aboard the ship, his ancient eyes gleaming with an energy they hadn't seen before. "Nervous, teacher?" Talix asked as they prepared for FTL jump. "Cautiously optimistic," replied. "I never thought I would see Droo again in my lifetime, yet here we are, embarking on a mission that could reshape galactic history." "You knew them?" Jorvis said, not a question but a statement. "During the war, you had direct contact?" Enhancement lights cycled through patterns of old memories being accessed. "Yes. Before the final phase of the conflict, when peace still seemed possible, I served as an intermediary, carrying messages between human and Droo diplomats when direct communication had broken down." "You never told us," Manthe noted, no accusation in her voice, merely observation. "Some experiences are too painful to revisit without purpose," said simply. And until now, there was no purpose in revisiting those particular memories. The ship jumped to FTL, the stars stretching into lines of light before resolving into the featureless gray of hyperspace. For 3 days they traveled in relative silence, each processing the magnitude of what they were undertaking. When they arrived at the rendezvous coordinates, they found seemingly empty space. No ships, no stations, nothing but distant stars, and the vast void between galaxies visible as a dark emptiness against the stellar backdrop. "Are we early?" Sella wondered, her diplomatic enhancement scanning for any sign of contact. "No," Jorvis replied, monitoring the ship's sensors. "Wait, there's something. A distortion in the gravitational field. Something is here, just hidden." As if in response to his observation, space itself seemed to ripple. A section of apparent emptiness shimmered and then solidified into a ship, sleek, alien, and unmistakably Droo in design. "Cloaking technology," Jorvis breathed, his enhancement lights pulsing with technical appreciation, far beyond anything in current use. A communication request chimed through their systems. With a nod from Arm, Talix accepted the connection. The view screen resolved to show a being that matched the historical images of the Droo, with an exoskeletal structure that gave them a somewhat insectoid appearance, multiple manipulating appendages, and large compound eyes that seemed to shimmer with inner light. Yet there were differences too, adaptations perhaps to their long isolation. "Trader Am," the Droo greeted, its voice processed through translation software yet carrying unmistakable emotion. "You have aged." "As have you, Diplomat Methrex," Am replied, stepping forward. "I did not expect to find you personally among the survivors." "I was junior during our negotiations," the Droo Methrex acknowledged. "But I never forgot your efforts for peace. When your message arrived with your authentication code, I insisted on leading this mission myself." The Droo's compound eyes shifted to take in the other Grent. "These are your students, the ones who discovered the vault?" "Yes," Am confirmed. "Telix, our expedition leader, Jorvis, our technical specialist, Sella, our diplomatic expert, and Manthi, our historical analyst." Methrex studied them each in turn. "You have taught them well, it seems. They found what was meant to remain hidden until the proper time. The question now is, has that proper time arrived?" "That is what we've come to discuss," Telix said, stepping forward. "The vault systems have begun automated activation sequences. Within 2 standard years they will require direct intervention, either to proceed with resurrection protocols or to deactivate permanently." Methrex's exoskeletal structure shifted in what might have been a sigh. "Then the decision can no longer be postponed. We have much to discuss, Grand Traders, much history to share, many possibilities to consider." "Will you come aboard?" Am invited. "Or would you prefer we join you?" "Neither for now," Methrex decided. "This initial contact must remain deniable for all parties. Instead, I will provide you with data crystals containing our history since the Exodus, our current situation, and our perspective on potential resurrection scenarios. You will provide similar information about galactic developments, the status of human civilization, and your trade corridor initiative. Then we will reconvene in 1 standard month, at coordinates I will provide for substantive negotiations." "Agreeable terms," Am acknowledged, falling naturally into trading patterns. "With one addition. We request information about your colony's current status, population, resources, technological development. This will help us assess the full range of options moving forward." Methrex seemed to hesitate, compound eyes flickering. "Acceptable, though I must warn you, our situation is not what you might expect. Survival has required adaptations." The exchange of information proceeded efficiently, data crystals transferred via automated drones to maintain the deniability Methrex had specified. Throughout the process, the Droo ship remained partially cloaked, revealing just enough of itself to facilitate the transfer. As they prepared to depart, Methrex addressed them one final time. "Be cautious, Grent Traders. The knowledge you now possess would be coveted by many and feared by more. Trust no one outside your immediate circle." "For the good of galactic trade," Talix replied with the traditional Grent farewell, "and for the future of all species," Methrex added before the view screen went dark and the Droo ship shimmered back into invisibility. As their own vessel jumped back to FTL, the 5 Grent gathered in the ship's secure conference room. The data crystals sat in the center of the table, their alien architecture somehow ominous despite their small size. "Well," Jorvis said, breaking the silence, That was momentous, Manthe supplied. The first documented contact with living Droo in nearly a century. And potentially just the beginning, Sela added, depending on what those crystals contain. Reached for one of the crystals, his ancient hand steadied despite the gravity of the moment. Let us find out what the future holds. The contents of the Droo data crystals proved more complex and disturbing than any of them had anticipated. In the secure analysis chamber aboard their ship, the 5 Grent watched as the final recording played out, Methrek's personal narrative of the Droo exodus and its aftermath. Our flight beyond the galactic rim was desperate, Methrek's voice explained as holographic images showed Droo ships moving through the intergalactic void. Fewer than 10,000 individuals escaped the human extermination campaign. Our resources were limited, our technology damaged by the hasty departure. The images shifted to show a barren planetoid, little more than a large asteroid with a thin artificial atmosphere contained by force fields. This became our home. Haven, we called it. Not a world that could support us naturally, but one we could adapt to our needs, or so we believed. Methrek's narrative continued, describing how the Droo population struggled to establish a self-sustaining colony. Initial successes gave way to mounting problems, genetic bottlenecks from the limited population, resource shortages, and psychological trauma from witnessing the destruction of their civilization. By the 3rd generation, it became clear that conventional survival was impossible, Methrex explained, the hologram now showing medical facilities and laboratories. Our population was declining despite all efforts. Our genetics were degrading. Haven's resources were insufficient for long-term habitation. The images changed again, displaying what appeared to be Droo undergoing some form of transformation, their exoskeletal structures being augmented with technological components. We faced extinction or adaptation, Methrek's voice continued. We chose adaptation. Cybernetic enhancement at first, similar to your own Grent modifications but more extensive, then binaural integration, synthetic organ replacement, consciousness transfer protocols. With each generation we became less organic, more something else. The final images showed current Droo beings that bore only passing resemblance to their ancestors. Their exoskeletons were now largely synthetic, their compound eyes replaced with sensor arrays, their internal organs mostly mechanical. Today, only 237 Droo remain, Methrex concluded, and none of us are fully organic. We exist in a state between biological and mechanical existence. The question of resurrection, therefore, becomes more complex. Would we resurrect our species as they were or as we have become? And would either form be accepted by a galaxy that decreed our extinction? The recording ended, leaving the 5 Grent in stunned silence. They're cyborgs, Jorvis finally said, his technical enhancements rapidly analyzing the data. Far beyond our own cybernetic augmentations, some appear to be almost entirely mechanical with only traces of original Droo biology. Are they even Droo anymore? Sela wondered. Legally, philosophically, practically? They consider themselves Droo, Manthe pointed out. Identity persists through transformation, just as we remain Grent despite our enhancements. But the scale is different, Telex argued. Our cybernetics supplement our biology. Theirs has largely replaced it. Had remained silent throughout the recording, his ancient eyes fixed on the final images of the transformed Droo. Now he spoke, his voice thoughtful. This changes the nature of our dilemma, he observed. Resurrection from the Genesis Vault would not be continuing their species as it exists now, but creating a separate branch, a biological population distinct from the cybernetic one. The political implications are significant, Sela noted, her diplomatic enhancements calculating scenarios. Humans feared biological Droo, defined by their martial culture and expansionist tendencies. Would they view these cybernetic Droo as the same threat, or as something new entirely? And how would biological Droo, raised from the Genesis Vault, relate to their cybernetic cousins? Manthe added. Would they recognize each other as the same species? Share the same values and goals? Telex's enhancement light cycled through analysis patterns. We need to review all the data before our next meeting with Mithrax. Jervis, focus on the technical aspects of their transformation. Manthe, historical and cultural implications. Sella, diplomatic scenarios based on this new information. And you, teacher? She asked, turning to I will review my own memories of the Droo I knew during the war, he replied, to assess how much of their original identity persists in these transformed beings, and to consider what that means for our path forward. For the next month, as their ship made its way back to the trade corridor, the 5 Grent immersed themselves in analysis. The Droo data crystals contained far more than Mithrex's narrative. Detailed histories, scientific research, philosophical treatises on their transformation, and assessments of galactic politics from their hidden vantage point. They've been monitoring us, Jervis reported during one analysis session, not actively interfacing with our systems, but observing. Their cloaking technology has allowed them to send small probes throughout the galaxy. They know more about current affairs than we initially assumed, including our trade corridor initiative, Sella added. According to these records, they've been watching its development with great interest. They recognized it as potentially laying groundwork for their eventual return. Return? Manthe questioned. The data suggests they've adapted to their isolation. Why would they seek to rejoin a galaxy that tried to exterminate them? Because isolation is killing them, Telex pointed out. Their population continues to decline despite their transformations. Without new resources, new technologies, possibly even new genetic material from the vault, they face extinction regardless. Nodded slowly. They are caught between impossible choices. Remain hidden and eventually die out, reveal themselves and risk human hostility, resurrect their biological form and face questions of identity and purpose. No wonder they sought us out as intermediaries. As the rendezvous date approached, they formulated a series of possible proposals, each balancing the interests of the cybernetic Droo, the potential biological Droo, humanity, and the broader galactic community. None were perfect, all carried substantial risks. But as had taught them, trading was about finding the optimal balance of risk and opportunity. When they arrived at the new coordinates Mithrax had provided, they found not a single ship, but a small space station, its design clearly Droo but adapted with technologies borrowed from multiple species. "Welcome to Nexus," Mithrax greeted them as they docked. "Our forward operating base for the past 50 standard years. From here we have observed the galaxy we once called home." Inside they found more cybernetic Droo, perhaps 20 in total, each unique in their adaptations yet clearly part of the same collective. Unlike the threatening Droo of historical accounts, these beings moved with a careful grace, their mechanical components humming softly as they worked at stations monitoring distant sectors of the galaxy. "You've reviewed our data," Mithrax stated rather than asked. "Compound sensor arrays focusing on each Grent in turn. You understand our situation." "We do," Telex confirmed, "and we've developed several potential approaches to address the complex issues at hand." For the next 3 days, they engaged in intensive negotiations, not the usual trade discussions focused on material value, but something far more fundamental: the future of a species, the stability of galactic peace, the ethics of resurrection and transformation. The cybernetic Droo, it emerged, were divided on the question of resurrection. Some viewed the Genesis Vault as a chance to restore their biological heritage, a complement to their transformed existence. Others feared that biological Droo, raised without the humbling experience of near extinction, might eventually repeat the mistakes that led to the war. "We have evolved through necessity," Mithrax explained during one session. "Our transformation was not merely physical, but philosophical. We abandoned the martial culture that defined our ancestors. We embraced a more contemplative existence, focused on preservation rather than expansion. Our current form reflects our new philosophy," Mithrax continued, gesturing to the cybernetic components that had replaced much of their biological structure. We question whether biological Droo, even with careful education, would follow the same path. Talex's enhancement lights cycled thoughtfully. What if the resurrection were gradual? A small initial population raised with guidance from both your people and selected intermediaries from other species? A measured approach has merit, agreed, combined with continued expansion of the trade corridor to strengthen economic interdependency. After further deliberation, a compromise emerged. The Genesis Vault would be activated, but under strict protocols. A small biological Droo population would be established within Grent territory, officially as cultural consultants for archaeological research. The surviving cybernetic Droo would gradually reveal themselves as a separate but related species, beginning with diplomatic contacts through Grent intermediaries. It will take decades, Methrex acknowledged, perhaps centuries before full integration is possible, but after nearly 100 years in exile, we have learned patience. 6 months later, as Telex stood in the secure facility watching the first Droo embryos develop in their incubation chambers, she reflected on their journey. What had begun as a quest for profit had evolved into something far more profound. The resurrection of a species, the healing of ancient wounds, the creation of new possibilities. Joined her, his ancient eyes contemplating the tiny developing lives. "Teacher," she asked quietly, "did we make the right choice?" "The right choice?" enhancement lights pulsed with amusement. "In trading, as in life, we rarely know with certainty. But we made a profitable choice, not just in credits, but in possibility. And that, young trader, is the greatest profit of all." As they left the chamber, the embryonic Droo continued their development, unaware that they represented both an ending and a beginning, the conclusion of extinction and the dawn of a new chapter in galactic history. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.